What's up, y'all? This is MVP with Juxtaposed. And today, the question is DEI the new racial slur? Stay tuned.
So we are here.
We are here.
We are here. We have a special guest, Healing Hotti. What's up?
Hi, guys.
If anybody knows the inception of Juxtaposed, you would know this very familiar face. And we are here to take on what is a challenging conversation. And I could think of no one other to bring on for this conversation than Healing Hotti. DEI, the new racial slur. Like, how do you start off with that? I think we just had to rip the band-aid off and go right in. Why is this even a question, or why do we think this is a racial slur? And jump into it. So first, I guess, Healing Hotti, tell us about yourself and what you're doing, and then we'll get into this very complicated plus fascinating story today.
Yeah, no, so Healing Hotti, or Bree, as the guys know me. I was Breezy once upon a time, so Juxtaposed, and I'm currently a mental health advocate and full-time content creator. It's something I've been doing for the past year now. So I just try to find different topics in moments like this to just talk about interesting topics that not only are happening from a political and social perspective, but also from a mental health perspective and how that impacts us.
Yep. What does that mean, right? Like, for someone who participated in the DEI committee for a long time, fought hard for it, it seems like an insult, right? It's like when someone is like, "Oh, go on now there, little boy, you got this." And I'm like, bro, I'm a grown man, right? It seems disrespectful. So I kind of wanted to dive into what DEI is, what it meant for us, and kind of its evolution, because for a very long time it was called D&I, and then they changed it to be DEI. So now it's like, the fact that it's being used in this way, it upsets me. But a lot of things about it upsets me. So first, I guess let's start. And like, what is your thoughts on DEI in the first place? I wanted to kind of frame that before we even get into what the definition was officially.
Well, what's it stand for again?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Equity.
Okay. I don't know why I thought it was equality for some reason.
I mean, equality, tomato.
So before I fully give my definition, what is equity? Because when I think that, I'm thinking money.
Ask a question to ask a
Well,
question.
it does have a lot to do with money, especially in a corporate space, of making sure that, people are being valued and have the same opportunities as each other. And it might look a little bit different depending on the person, their race, their background, their experience, but someone actually being valued and measured based off of their merit, not, a male making way more than a woman is just because, he might be a white male versus, a Black woman, she's making significantly less than her counterparts and doing even more work.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. So my original thought was, hey, it's about if you're a minority or if you're like whatever gender, that you're included in everything that everybody else is included in without it being like, okay, well, since your name is Shanae, you're not going to get hired. Because like they're not even going to put your I don't know, that's my go-to. Like that's my go-to name.
Okay.
Shanae. So I see someone sees that and they're like, okay, I'm not even going to put this person through the process. I'm not even going to give them a chance. So when I say diversity and equity and inclusion, I'm like, yo, that's not even on the table. You're going to give this person a chance no matter what they are based on their merits and how they add value to your. And when I think of diversity with DEI, I think like company wise too. But I mean, I know it can be applied to other things, but from a company standpoint, since I've worked for a few companies at this point, that's how I see it. And that's how I was first introduced to it. So from a company standpoint, that's how I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
What you got, Healing Hotti?
Well, I think in its purest form, it's really to combat some of the systemic things that many minorities have had to deal with, and how different structures have set them behind the curve, haven't given them much of an opportunity to have a real fighting chance in this economy. And it makes people feel human and valued and like they matter, and in its purest form. And that's what I think it was designed to approach. Now, that's a different conversation I'm sure we're going to get into. So yeah, that's when I think of DEI, that's how I see it.
Yeah, and to double down on that, that was really what it felt like. It was like an opportunity where you would be approached with a certain, like, to your merit standpoint. It's like, okay, well, I did the work, I am capable of doing the work, and I am given the opportunities because of that, not because of any other thing, like my race or my sexual orientation, any of that stuff. I'm qualified and I get it, right? And truthfully, if you think about America's history, it's not always been that way. When you have stories of people being prevented from doing things like simple as voting, right, for different reasons, it's kind of a big thing. So the idea in my mind, in what I assume is its purest form, is to level the playing field so that everyone is afforded the same opportunities, right? And that was my general interpretation and how I felt like what it was trying to achieve. Now, what it is now, I don't, that's a whole different conversation. But what I wanted to do is kind of talk through the the actual definition, which it says DEI, which stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, is a discipline. DEI is a policy or a set of initiatives designed to make people of various backgrounds feel welcomed and ensure they have the support to perform to the fullest of their abilities in the workplace. So it really was a workplace focused thing, so which makes sense why you feel like that way as well. And we have like definitions of diversity and equity we could get in, but now that we've kind of defined it, do we feel like it actually accomplished what it was set out to be?
No. And I think we had a similar thing happen with Black Lives Matter, is that we took, what it was meant to sort of address and help people with. And then because from a media and a political standpoint, they kind of attacked and challenge the people that hold up these structures that really don't create a space for people to excel and do well based off of what they're worth and the work that they can do. And they've just kind of turned it into a way to like make the to turn the victim into the abuser. That's the best way I can put it. It's that they've kind of they've pointed the finger back. It's really that Spider-Man meme, but it's not it's not a good representation of it, because now they're just like, oh, well, actually, I'm the victim and you're causing the problem, and now I'm having to just hire anybody or give anybody a chance, and they don't even know how to do the job, when that's not really true. They can just say anything to distract from what it was, designed for. So in the shortest way, I can say, no, it does not.
What are your thoughts?
For me, it's more of a pay thing. I said this off camera, but I feel some type of way about it because I felt used. But various companies that I've been with, I've had white counterparts that we are in the same position, or either I take over their position, and then the peanut gallery or through the grapevine, someone tells me, hey, like they were getting paid this amount of money. And I'm like, it's not even anywhere close to what they're paying me. and yet I'm taking over their position. And I've had it happen to me in two companies. So I'm like, if this is supposed to be equity and inclusion and stuff like that, I'm like, one, you're not paying me as my peers. And I feel like that, and this is just a personal thing, I tend to like work really hard when I'm tasked with something. So I'm going to get it done. And I'm also not going to complain or anything because as a black man, I know I have to put like 110% and not just 100%, right? So whether they know that or not, that's me. But I do feel like, and it might be something about being a young black man too, where they're like, okay, well, we can get him to do twice as much work without having to pay him as much as that person. But if he leaves, the new person that comes in, who tends to be white, is going to get paid what we should be paying them. And I feel like America has started noticing that, and that's why they're starting to have, hey, you have to put the pay on the job description. Hey, you got to start releasing bans because it's not like we're making this stuff up. And now they're like, okay, well, we're starting to have lawsuits. America or whoever's making these decisions are like, okay, we're starting to have big problems about this. You need to start putting out transparency. That's the word. T for transparency, word of the day. They're looking at transparency now. And I'm like, yeah, I think it's important because I felt like I've been, shafted or like done wrong. And then the second part is where I feel like I don't think it's doing the best it can do. It's not making me, like when I go into work at these places, I don't feel included. So I'm not the one who's going to say, hey, this is what you need to do. So maybe I'm part of the problem, but I haven't felt included. And to be honest with you, I don't even get the sense of like they really sitting down and having a discussion with everyone to get them included. It's more like, hey, this is what we're doing. Come over here. And it's like, I don't know if that's necessarily what I want to do. Can you have a conversation with us as a team, as a company, and be like, hey, what would you guys like to see? I don't think I've been asked that question.
Yeah, the funny thing about a lot of the initiatives like that is it does feel a bit performative. I feel we're gonna get into a little bit more. Maybe just jump into it. But one of the things I felt like reason that DEI became such a large thing, especially in the last couple of years, was around the time that the whole George Floyd thing happened and the pandemic, and everyone was paying attention, and people were like, "Oh, wow, this has been happening," and I'm like, "Did you decide to just overlook all the other things that, like, there's a lot of names we know of people we never met that we have literally died because of being treated differently, right? Like that's a legitimate thing that we've all been talking about, and there's a weird phenomenon of like I call white guilt. It's not my term, but I just say it is guilt. It felt like guilt. So then you saw companies jumping out and saying, "Oh well, we need to make sure that we are not being shown in the side that's like, not condemning these things that are happening." And so you saw all of these people have, we stand with our people. All it was the crusade of the time.
You saw it on all the platforms.
Everything. Well, it's like, why is this on my milk, bro? Like, why are we
everywhere?
So now as a result, you tie that into how people feel, where it's like, oh well, these, we're making sure we're highlighting these people who may not, deserve it. Which it's funny because you described your experience as a black man, and I'm sure it's similar for you too, where it's like we have to be 110 to 150 at a job where someone can come in and because they look like the other people that manage the company, they can be mediocre. Mediocre. I know the word. They can be mediocre.
Is what the youth call.
Yeah, and they don't get the same things. And even this, when it comes into the little experiences like we have, like if I'm having a bad day, I have to make sure that my bad day is not shown on my face.
Oh, you can't be the angry black man or black woman, right? Like,
we all know that. Which is ridiculous because if you think about it, that if we start talking about like equity, outside of the money thing, I should be able to be a human. I shouldn't have to be perfect. I feel like I have to be perfect just for somebody to come and say you're one of the good ones, which is a whole nother conversation.
Sounds racist.
It
You're
is.
one of the good. You're one of the good ones.
I've heard it multiple times, even in my current job.
I mean, I was going through a challenging personal time in a job, and I had a manager pull me to the side, ask me if I was okay, and then followed up by saying, because people look to you as kind of setting the tone and the mood and the level of it's just kind of the standard for the team. Mind you, I was on a predominantly Black team. That it's important that, even when I don't feel like 100%, it's okay not to give 110% that day. And this is a direct quote. It's okay not to give 110% that day, but give 100%.
It's
that's
crazy. You know what's wild is because when we talk about it, it sounds like we're just complaining. But in the truth is that we've always, wanted to just be the people that are there and not be considered, oh, we're the Black people, right? Or like, I remember there was situations where we would all sit together and it would make people uncomfortable. And I'm like, yo, I'm sitting with the people that I talk to and interact with. We have similar backgrounds. When other people do it, it's not a problem. So why is it a problem when we do it? It's like, oh, they're coming together. They're forming a plan. Like, they're getting organized. It's like, we're eating lunch. We're not even eating the same thing. We are different. One person went and got something. Somebody brought food from home. Like, we're different. And I feel like that's the part with equity that I would want. Like, we should be in a place where we're actually being allowed to be ourselves. And that also comes with the challenge, because there is the Candace Owens of the world, the Tim Scotts, the people that are on the Republican side, right? And you look at them and you're like, oh, this person's a coon. And you're like, oh, can we say that?
I don't know if that's
we might have to bleep that out. Either way, they're saying
a spoon. I don't know what else to call it.
You get that tone, and so it's like it's a hard place. So there's two sides to it, and we're gonna talk about the negatives of DEI later on. But like, there are two sides to it, and that's where it gets very interesting.
I just want to address the spoon thing, right?
I didn't think about that when I was saying it. Go ahead.
What is the definition of that? Is that just that you agree with white people a lot? Like, what is that?
Well, I don't know the exact definition.
Right.
But in essence is that a coon spoon was seen as, and this is rooted back in slavery, would be the enslaved person who would help uphold whatever systems or directives or abuse, torture was in place, and it would encourage the other enslaved people to just go on, to get along, do what master says. And and so even though he was a slave too, or they were a slave too, they felt if I smile and wave and just do exactly what is asked of me, I'll be fine, I'll survive. And it was truly a survival tactic. I do feel like people who are identified as spoons.
Uncle Ruckus.
Oh yes, Uncle Ruckus.
From now on, if you're Uncle Ruckus, we know what you're talking about.
Yes.
But Samuel Jackson from the Django.
Yes.
Yeah.
Django,
okay,
Django.
So those archetypes, it's really just a survival tactic. It was like, if I just do exactly what they say, I'll be all right. I'll make it through. And then it slowly morphs into a Stockholm syndrome where you really start to protect and love your abuser. And so that's really what, in essence, if we kind of use, within the Black community, we definitely use it as a way to like demonize another Black person. But really, when you boil it down, it's a trauma response, and survival is a way to survive and try to make it through. I think where it becomes concerning is when, you know, you see some Black people who can be identified as Uncle Ruckus, is that they're being the
token
kind of the lead in putting things in place that make it worse for Black people in the workplace or wherever it may be. So that's where it becomes like a real slap in the face, because it's like, bro, we in the same boat, whether you want to admit it or not.
Admit it or not, yeah.
Yeah, and then like another example of that is the I call him the baddie in the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas. He's getting flown out all over the world, you know. Like, anyhow, but I do think that yes, there is a archetype there that we like. I like the way you described it, because it is a trauma response. It is, some people are like, I'll do whatever it takes to not be in this thing, not be considered that way. The part that I don't like is when, to your point, they're being used as an example. Like, you know, oh, well, this is essentially, it's the good old boy thing, but now in order to be accepted, you are becoming what is acceptable for other people, and then use as an example to demonize everybody else. It's like, if oh, see, that one does it like that, so why the rest of y'all? And that's also not fair. So, yeah, that we went
on
so
side,
deep.
but I was just, because like I see it thrown around. And sometimes I see it thrown around when someone just disagrees with whoever's point of view it is, and it's like, oh, you're Uncle Ruckus. It's like, bro, it's like, I disagree with this point. So yeah, I think maybe that would be fighting words for me, if someone was to call me that, because I don't believe I'm anywhere close to that. So
I think that we need to, as a side, as a group of people, we need to work to do a better job of communicating with each other and disagreeing with each other with respect.
There we go.
Even if you disagree, let's stop and talk. Because to your point, first of all, we're all in the same boat. Like, it's very infrequent when you see, like, if we're like, we talk about police brutality and all that stuff. There's no way, if there's something going on, the police is gonna look at you and be like, "Oh, you're one of the good ones," right? If something is going on and we're all in that situation, we're all in that situation together. And I think that we lose our power a lot of times because we find ways to differentiate ourselves, which is one of the reasons I hate the light skin, dark skin thing. I hate it. I hate it so much because, truthfully, I've only been seeing it used in a productive way to certain people when it's to create division. Oh, you know, well, Obama's mother was half white. I literally had somebody say that to me when he was winning. He said, "Oh yeah, but his mother's half white." I'm like, so you're asking which side of him is the better part?
Well, I heard some people were saying, "Hey, if you have white in you, you're not Black."
It's normally the other way around.
And I was like, "Hold up, what?"
It's normally the other way around. If you have black
well, no, I'm hearing Black people saying, "Hey," like Black people are taking this and saying, "Hey, you're not Black if you have white in you." And I'm like, so especially when it comes to saying the N-word, they're like, "Yo, you can't say it," and they're like, "But my father's Black," and they're like, "But your mother's white." So I'm like,
it's interesting switch though, because I know historically it was like a 3/5 rule or something like that. If there was some part of you that was Black, you were Black.
That's what I thought.
So it's very interesting to watch the switch happen.
Yeah, I've recently seen it, especially in the streaming world. I've been diving into, and it, like, the youth in the streaming world, they're really like, "Yo, you can't say this if you have any part of white in your family." So yeah. I don't know. I don't get the vision, because I know that it's a old school tactic, and I thought we was all like, there was literally a plan, just like a guy who actually implemented this, like, hey, to divert, like, the way we can conquer Black people is like split them up. And so I'm like, I think you heard about this too, right? There's like an actual guy who came up with this.
It's not even just Black people. It's like the non-rich people of America. Because if you go back to it, like, the term white existed on, I think it's 17 something or 1970, whatever it was. It wasn't that long ago. So the grouping of people together and differentiating them by their race is something that I feel like it was systematically done to ensure that there was division. So, but trying to keep us on topic, because I know we could go all day on this. The question is, when and why did DEI become trendy? Because as we try to figure out how it became the new slur, we need to kind of figure out how it became a thing. So, to your knowledge, when did that become a thing? And then specifically, when did it switch from D and I, and why? Because it was D and I for a long time.
Well, as I think you spoke to it earlier, it was within the pandemic, so 2020, George Floyd had just been murdered, and I think this was the first time in our generation that we've all just been still enough to really pay attention to what was going on in the world.
Yeah.
And on a global level, this wasn't just America. And so for the first time, usually we have a lot of nonsense going on in America, just messed up things, and we can kind of keep turning because, there's not, people can't pay attention to, too many things at once. Mm-hmm. But because the world was really at a standstill, we had a global attention, and we had other countries being like, yeah, so y'all are saying y'all are the best, country on the planet. Nah. And so, what's going on over there? And so they were really forced from a economic perspective to really pay attention and do something about it, because people were pulling their dollars and ready to, and were burning America to the ground if need be. And this was kind of the first time we'd seen that such a unified front about the race, I think, in the world. And so so this kind of forced them to, and the media loves to do this, try to come up with some sort of phrase that people can identify with, can speak to very quickly, that can kind of churn through the media. And that's where D and I came into place. But then people started to, because people love these acronyms, they started to really think about, well, it's not just about like having a diverse number of people from like a race and background perspective, and then making sure that everybody's included, but do they have what they need to actually excel? And so that's where the E was introduced. And so it really happened within 2020. It was very quick shift. You started to see a lot of formal positions happen within corporate jobs, be formed, where it was the DEI officer. And really it was a way to say, hey, we as a company are paying attention about it. Please don't pull your dollars. That's my memory and recollection of when all of this kind of came about from a marketing and a corporate perspective.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Do you have any feelings per se on that?
No. I think Bree hit it out the park.
Yeah. I think that was perfect. So the next question is like, I think I had them in different order, but like, what are some of the negatives of that? Because I feel like of DEI, because I feel like as people who should have been on the receiving end of it, we all have different feelings. Well, I think so, about how it actually affected us on a day-to-day basis. So talk to me, I guess we'll start with you, because you had nothing on that one. What were your feelings about it, and how do you feel like it was, like, what were some of the negatives?
I don't know if it's a negative, but I guess my thing is I don't know how to feel about people putting in the effort to do this thing, in my opinion, to check a box. So I guess my issue is I don't like people doing stuff to just make me feel better, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like, I'd rather, like, yo, if we're going to do this, I'd rather see you do it in a way where I believe that you care and you're actually putting in the work to, better the world, right? And I think a lot of what I'm seeing is, hey, like, it's like, even in some companies I've been at, it's like, whatever the month of heritage, like say it's an Asian heritage or something, they just put the food out on the table and be like, hey, everybody, let's celebrate. So I'm like, and it's not even my heritage, right? But I'm like, I don't think that's going to do it. Or, hey, let's give them a holiday. Let's give them June 18th. And I'm like, cool. I mean, who's mad at having a day off, right? But I'm like, I think it's deeper than that, and I'm not seeing the progress of someone actually tackling it from a deeper perspective. So I think it's negative because it is something that you can put on your task list and be like, hey, let's make sure that we address this, and then we go on about our business. Like, and then if anybody feels some type of way, you can be like, hey, well, I have these receipts of I did this and I did this and I did that. And so I can see that being a negative.
I wholeheartedly concur with that.
Bree,
All right.
What you got over there?
Woo.
She was waiting for this.
Yeah. I was waiting. Okay. So in my professional experience, I worked with, and this is a common experience for Black women in the workplace. We're often teamed up with white women who pretend that, we're all in this together because we're women, and let's support each other and let's elevate each other and let's give each other the opportunity. And but behind closed doors, they're really putting you through hell and want to make it clear, oh, you are not to be better than me. You can't advance more than me. And so it was there's a lot of microaggressive things that happen behind the scenes, macroaggressive, just unhealthy things that are structured in a way where you don't really feel like you progress, right? So then we come in with, we're all in this together initiative. And so now you have these same people that give you hell every other month of the year. Now be like, oh my gosh, it's Juneteenth. What are you doing for Juneteenth? And, let's make sure that we have you at the forefront of our presentation because we want to make sure that we are really thinking about this from a diverse perspective. But behind the scenes of that presentation, they had you make the presentation. So the negatives of it was that it kind of equipped people who weren't genuinely good people to their diverse counterparts and gave them kind of how you little kids, they'll visit like the police station or a fire department and they get that badge. Well, they got that badge and now they're like, well, see, look, I'm inclusive and I care about everybody, right? Which, if you speak up and you're saying, well, no, actually you are probably the worst person to be talking about the subject, you look like the bad guy. And so again, it speaks to what you guys are saying about you don't want to look like the angry Black person, or you don't want to be the person that speaks up and say, well, actually, no, you're not what you say you are. And bring this seeming to bring this air of negativity when you're honestly just bringing the truth. And so it kind of forced people who are not in the best corporate environments to kind of grin and bear it and be like, you guys can say that, you guys can post that all on your websites, but you don't really mean that. You don't really care because it's not showing up in the promotion cycles. It's not showing up in the pay grades. It's not showing up on the back end. And then what I'll also say is that for, minorities, whether that be based on your sexual orientation, disability, race, gender, it really created this crabs in a barrel kind of mentality because I'll say amongst some of my Black male coworkers, it really kind of became, well, what about me and what I do with this? So Black women make the least here. Well, then Black men then turn around and say, well, I don't make that great of a dollar either. And so how do we properly prioritize? And because we couldn't agree on what to properly prioritize and bring to the forefront, we're not really pushing forward the right issues or pushing forward issues at all to make the right change. Then when we finally were able to agree, and then it created this, then we are still met with the same people who don't really care about these issues. They're just using it as from a marketing perspective. So unfortunately, what it did was it equipped the people who were not really interested in progress and change. It gave them a kind of a veil to hide behind and pretend like they care. And then it also created this some people kind of turned against each other of what to prioritize and what to push forward to make sure that we are addressing the equity standpoint. So a lot of people didn't see a lot of positive change because you equipped the wrong people with the task of making change.
Yeah, to that point, it was you were talking, I was like, yeah, they gave a lot of companies a get out of jail free card. It gave a lot of companies that ability to say, hey, yeah, we do this, or we've been doing this, or this is a thing that is important to us on paper without actually having to make the policies or make the changes that align to these ideas. So those are one of the biggest things for me. And I think you said it, pretty on point. It's like, it really did create a lot of division because it hyper focused on certain subgroups. And so like, I know I was in that conversation too with the black men versus black women thing, which we need to do better at communicating with each other. That's like, that's a whole other podcast conversation. But like at that time, it was like, well, the focus is being put in one direction, and then the other person is like, well, yeah, like to Bree's point, it's like, yeah, well, but what about me, right? And that to me at the core was more divisive than anything else. We lost any kind of step forward that we had before that to that infighting, and that is one of the biggest things. One of the things, the check in the box thing really bothered me so much because I know we were having a conversation about this offline, but it was, for me, there was a point where I was like, yeah, I really believe in what we're trying to do here, and I think that it can at least create a safe space for us to at least have conversations about things that were bothering us, right? With people who were like-minded, at least to show up. Because truthfully, everybody wasn't showing up to these things at all. But what I realized as I went on is like, and Bree told me I wasn't, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I felt like I was slightly delusional because I was like, we could actually make some change here. Let me keep pushing for it. And then because it was a checkbox thing for a lot of people, it was like, well, we have it, but we're not gonna actually do anything with it. And they didn't say that out loud, but it was more of it felt like an attempt at pacification. Like, we know that we'll keep this subgroup of people happy with the idea that we're gonna try to do something, but we're not going to actually do anything because we have to think about revenue. And the weird thing is we did a lot of research to show that, like, when your space is more diverse and your people feel like they belong, they work harder, they care more about their work. You spend so much more time at work than anywhere else in your life, right? If you think about it. Why would you not want to be, I know, right? But why would you not want to be in a place where you feel comfortable? And that was my hope. And it was met with a lot of empty promises. It was met with a lot of like, yeah, okay, cool, we're doing this. And then 6 months later, we're like, where's the update on this thing?
Well, let me ask y'all a question, because I know about this situation. Do y'all feel like at any point there was like, hey, maybe we are at any point, do y'all feel like maybe we were getting somewhere?
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah, okay. So, without saying too much,
right?
And MVP, K Styles, and I worked together, and during 2020, I later found this out. K Styles was really kind of working with leadership to really understand how we make change behind the scenes. Meanwhile, there was an existing D&I committee that really felt like they needed to speak up on behalf of the Black employees. And so when the two conversations kind of came known, there was really a push to say, and I believe Kay Styles, correct me if I'm wrong, to talk to the Black employees. And so from there, a group of Black employees who are not, and I'll say this in this day, not only the hardest working, a group of the hardest working people at the organization, but genuinely some of the more connected employees to just different aspects of the business who could really speak on what the genuine consensus and feelings were of employees and speak on the Black experience. But in us speaking on the Black experience of this organization, we weren't just talking about Black people. A lot of people can relate to what we were, going through. And so we had this conversation with, the top level leadership. And we were able to come up with action items. And because one of the people in leadership who genuinely a good person and had the ear and was respected by leadership, was able to help us push certain initiatives forward. And so we saw genuine diverse hire on a board perspective that was just like a valid,
that one. See, that's what I'm talking about.
And her background was crazy. Just alone, forget her gender, forget her race. She's a boss. And so to bring that in felt like change. Well,
take your time. It's okay.
This was a little bit of PTSD.
Yeah,
there was a lot happening there.
Some trauma there, but we're gonna get through it.
Yeah. Then when the world started to calm down just a little bit, and it kind of felt like they looked around and it was like, oh, we don't really have to keep going with this. Is when we felt a shift in like it was bamboozle, and not from a leadership perspective, but from all the levels down that have been able to operate under the radar and say like we care, but they really didn't care. And so we then felt that in our pay, we felt that in the promotion cycles, we felt that in who people were selecting to run the DEI committee then. And so it was like, it was a small glimmer of hope. And I think that helped us hold on and hope things would change on the lower levels. It was great to know that we had the ear of higher leadership for a time. But to see that was so brief was unfortunate. So to answer your question, there was a time that it felt genuine. And then just outside of that organization, there are genuine organizations where it was genuine. I'll think of Target. Target still to this day has an excellent designer program and a creator and entrepreneurial incubator that allows people who are maybe just kind of up and coming, or people who are well known for their work, to have spaces in Target and in a retail space, in whether that's on the home side or the food side or makeup.
Okay.
It really creates a space. I mean, we even saw that during the pandemic as well. When people were tearing up Targets, Target was like, we don't care. Tear it up. That's stuff. we see that this is finally a way for people who have been oppressed for hundreds of years to say enough. So if y'all got to burn it down, burn it down. And so, there are genuine organizations that use this time to say, okay, this is how or Ben and Jerry's is another great one. Ben and Jerry's has been and made it very clear, like, oh, we're still, this is still what we stand for. We still care about the experiences of everyone. So I'm thankful for really what it revealed in organizations that we were working for and the organizations that we support from an economic standpoint.
Yeah, and it's to your point, it took off the veil that could not be put back on. You cannot, like, we knew where you stood, and people remember. I don't know if we're as active as making sure that certain things happen as a result, but it was very aware. You were very aware of that. One of the negatives that I found that I did not like was the whole BIPOC thing.
Yes, you have mentioned this.
I remember saying it in meetings in those DEI committees, and I was like, I don't like this, because what you have done is you have grouped a bunch of people together, and it lends very close to the idea that, well, as long as you have these group, as long as you have these group of people together, you've checked the box, you've done your part, and you're good to go, right? And anytime you group a bunch of people in history together, it's not gone that well. We could talk about multiple opportunities where that happened, and you're like, ooh, this is not a good thing. So I did not like that at all, and I think it lends itself a lot to affirmative action, and what that ended up being the negative thing for. Bree?
Nah, she got her hand up.
I just want to say.
Yes, front of the class.
I just want to say that I said that from as soon as I heard BIPOC, I said, absolutely not. I am not crab meat. Do not lump me in with anybody else.
Bro.
Because though my experiences are probably related, they're not the same. And yes. That's so disrespectful to be like, well, y'all are kind of similar, so let me just group it. No, absolutely not.
But the sad thing about it is it became an effective tool to get us to the point where we are now using it as a slur.
Dive into that a little bit.
By grouping it together, you lose a bit of the individuality that is required to say, hey, this is truly diverse. You start saying, hey, okay, well, y'all, and then you could be. It's the next thing you know, it's like, oh, y'all only got this because we had to have one of y'all. And it's a slippery slope. And I understand it's a complicated thing because we're talking about a bunch of different people, and the human nature is to group things together, right? We have tennis shoes and we have sneakers that are all sneakers, but like we have, like we want to group it together. But when you're talking about people's individual experiences, those need to be noted as well.
So that has me thinking from a number standpoint, because I did want to get to this, because I do think these companies are like basing everything off of numbers. Mm-hmm. I think that's an easy way to hit your number. Hey, if everybody's in this group, I can say, well, I might not have but like one Asian person, one Spanish person, but hey, I have like 10 bio whatever people. Yeah. But fudging the numbers.
But by that token, you also create a space where people who are not of that group can say and feel justified in saying, you're only here because we had to hit those numbers. Because if you start putting them together and saying, oh, well, this is how we group these people, it's very easy for someone to say, okay, well, the only reason you are here is because you're a DEI hire.
So I have a problem with that saying.
Go ahead.
And we might be moving too fast, but I guess my thing is, it's like, how do we get to the point where it makes sense? Because there needs to be some attention to where you are hiring people who are diverse. But I do not want to be considered a diverse hire. I don't know how that makes sense. I don't know how to make sense of that. But I do think there is some level of, hey, if you don't have someone paying attention to this specifically, it's not going to happen. So I'm like, I'm kind of conflicted from the part of like, hey, let's go out here. Because I was reading up on some of the stuff, and it's like, hey, these are programs to go target people. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about being targeted. But then I'm like, how else are you going to go find these diverse people if you don't target that demographic?
What? Well, I mean, there are plenty of systems in place to weed out what you don't want, right? And if that is, I'm looking for college educated employees, there are plenty of systems where you could just find people who have at least a 4-year degree. As a result, that's going to alienate a group of people. Similarly, if you're looking for, because if you want to be honest, most people of color cannot afford to go to Ivy League schools. And so that, if you say, okay, now I'm just going to look at college educated and they went to an Ivy League school, that's going to condense the selection pool, right?
Yeah.
So in my head is, what is wrong with then reversing that? If you have already created and are utilizing systems that are pulling in a certain group of people all of the time, what is wrong with reversing that so that way you get something outside of it, something that is outside of what you normally go for? There has never been, I've never heard someone say they hired someone just because they were Black, just because they were Indigenous, just because they were Asian. That no one I know has come out and said that. But I'm sure that they have biases that if they look at a resume and the name kind of doesn't sound quite white, they're not going to go for that. Or if they don't see a degree on there, they're not going to go for that because of how the systems are set up. It more times than not, it's going to be an educated white person that you're going to pull in if you're looking for certain things. And so, I mean, I think that all of this is just a way, again, for us to turn against each other and distract from saying what we're really trying to get at is like, I know my value. I'm a hard worker. Give me a fair shot and fair pay at what the market value is to do the job, versus saying, well, I don't want you to just hire me because I'm Black. Because no, but they're not hiring us because we're Black.
Yeah.
That's not.
You took the question out of me, out of my mouth, because the real question is how many people, and we have to make the separation between work and like the collegiate thing, because I think that affirmative action is something that has happened and people feel strongly about, and it's been removed. That's why it was such a big deal in the Supreme Court. But how many people can you say in your working experience, I think we all have over 10, 15 years of working experience, that was ever hired just to fit that quota?
I wouldn't know.
I'm sure it exists.
Yeah.
By all means, I'm sure it's not completely, but the stereotype of it exists so much that we've all felt the negative experiences from it, right? Like someone saying you're one of the good ones, or someone saying, you're only here because you needed to fit that. We've felt that as people on the receiving end. I know I'm speaking for myself. I know I've had people treat me like, oh, well, you're only here because I'm like, wait, hold on. But like, did I not do the work?
And that's my point with the whole diversity hire. I don't care for, hey, because when you say that, it makes me feel like, yo, I'm a token Black person, right? I want to say, hey, I got hired because, my resume is legit. 5 stars. For people looking for,
Okay, all right,
looking to hire somebody. But anyway, I'm like, I don't want to be considered a diverse hire. I understand that people have to, like, the companies have to look for that. But I'm just saying, like, hey, I do think there is a world, like we said, where people are getting hired because they're black. Like, they might check the boxes of, like, education or stuff like that, but I do think that, and not even just black, a minority. Because I've seen companies come back with the numbers and be like, hey, we've hired this amount of minority people. So I'm like, there's no way in my mind I will say, okay, you're calculating these numbers and you're not putting the effort to make sure you hit these numbers.
Okay. Now, I'm gonna speak from just experience. What I've watched the hiring team from the outside.
Okay.
All right. So cause this is just naturally who I am. I like to get to know the people who I'm working with, whether I have anything to do with their job or not, because this will help me understand, is this a good organization or not? Are you a good person or not? Mm-hmm. Okay. So with that understanding, around this time, company, they were looking to hire permanent HR, head of HR. And this was just on the tail end of, we've got a diversity, equity, and inclusion. We've got to find the right, person for the role. And we don't want to just hire them based off because they're black. Okay. Mm-hmm. So with that understanding, they started using other tools that would pull in diverse hires. Like, there are literal headhunters out there, or recruiters, external recruiters that will just kind of go places and network and scout of, like, hey, this person was, has a really strong background in this, and they went to this school, and they're black, or they're this, or they're Indian, or they're whatever the case may be, right? But they're looking for people outside of, and they pull in some, white women and white men to make sure it's truly it's a nice blend of people. Okay. It's outside of what they would normally go for, just to open themselves up to something new. Okay. I watched as they went through a number of interviews for people, and again, these candidates were all diverse, right? I think, like trans woman, a black man, a white woman, and someone with a disability. Wow, that's a pretty mix. It's a pretty good mix, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, they put the black man through a rigorous interview process. They sat them down with the entire leadership panel, again with the highest leadership, and the board, to see if they were a good fit. And you know what? They still went with a white woman. So, and
did she also go through that too? Is the question.
So what I'm saying is that by all and in the feedback that I heard about the black guy is that we don't know if he would be a good culture fit. What does that even mean? Is he qualified to do the job? Just for you to fall back and say, okay, it was a diverse hire because now it's a woman. And that woman, it's what ended up coming out was that woman, when they went back in her history, had a horrid history of running HR departments. So if they had done their research, if they really judged the person based off of their merit and their value, they probably wouldn't have gone with that white woman. But because of their own bias, they went with that white woman because it was comfortable and it was a culture fit, whatever that means. So I think more times than not, what we're gonna find, if it is a black person that's getting hired, they're getting hired on a lower level. They do not have a space in leadership to really make impact in these organizations who are using DEI as a marketing value. And And then when there is a real opportunity to place somebody in there who can really make positive change within the organization, they're met with all of these roadblocks to where now they're not the right fit. But it's all subjective. It's not really based off of merit and what values they could really.
You know what's funny? I was listening to this, I think it was Trevor Noah's podcast, and they were talking about the VP pick on Trump's side. And he said something, one of them, the guest said something that stood out with me. And they talked about the fact that when people see, they say they see you, like they see themselves in you. A lot of times it's not that they see themselves, they see exactly what their experiences were in you, right? Like, so that always lended itself to a conversation about representation for us. And I was like, the thing that is hardest is that if you look at the leadership in a lot of these companies, we don't have anybody that looks like us. And it doesn't need to be man, woman. And literally, if there is in their leadership is all exactly the same type of people, whether it be a bunch of white men and then a white woman, or just one or two people that identify, you have a very particular view that you're going to live by. And that's what we're seeing that has been going on for such a long time. And the other thing that's large about this is that 2020 and that whole time interrupted systems that have been working for a long time. We sat down and we were like, whoa, wait a minute. Which is one of the reasons why people were just quitting their jobs. Like, I don't want to do this anymore, right? Like, this is the thing. It interrupted a lot of things. And now I feel like we are aggressively being thrusted back into that sphere. And
the old ways.
The old way of doing things, which was, for all intents and purposes, broken. So it is such a complicated conversation. But at the end of the day, I feel like, to answer your question, there was a sliver of hope. There was like, finally, we are seeing the tide changing. And we've seen it change in certain areas. Like, we look at, this is a complicated conversation too, but we look at the Me Too era, right? Like, and even though that was like incredibly co-opted, but you see that we're seeing that being taken a little bit more serious now when these incidents happen, i.e. the Cassie thing. Like, that whole Cassie thing, if that came out before, it would have been greeted by a lot less attention. So we're seeing that happen, and we're like, okay, cool, well, everything is happening, and we're seeing change, and America is moving into a different space. Okay. And I think, to your point earlier, Bree, you talked about the fact that when we sat down and had that conversation, the opinions and the issues that the Black people brought up was not just Black agenda. It was not just the agenda of us. It was literally, these are the problems at the company. And that's what we see a lot of times, is that when us as Black people look at problems, we don't look at it from like, this is our problem. We look at it as, this is the problem that everyone is speaking, and we are being afforded the opportunity to talk about it. So let's talk about how we can fix it for everybody. And we never stop and say, okay, well, we need to fix it for us, because there is a lot of PTSD of when we've tried to do that, and it's been attacked one way or the other, right? So it was a glimmer of hope that now it's hard to even think about, because it feels like we've done a complete 180, and it feels worse. It feels worse for me. But
okay,
my opinion, I mean, from the corporate standpoint, I feel like it's now become something that we don't even talk about at all.
Well, okay. So what I will say is that I don't think that it is worse. I think what we had to realize is that this was an opportunity for us to see everyone like truly who they are, like what you really care about. And then when we started to see like who was real and who was just pretending, we shouldn't have continued to put a lot of merit into the people that were just pretending. Like that was really the opportunity. But okay, well, you're not serious. So let me just direct my attention, my energy, my work ethic to somewhere else. That's what I think it was an opportunity to do. I think it was, we're seeing this with this now upcoming election, is that the people who genuinely care about diversity, equity, and inclusion are backing, Kamala Harris, because not only, on the exterior, what her makeup is and what she stands for, but if you look at her track record, if you look at her career as a whole, she's a strong candidate, period. She really can go toe to toe with the best of them. And that's important from a leadership perspective. But because they're genuine people and who care about seeing things change and in a positive direction, is why we can start to have these conversations again about DEI. But that's why it can also be used as a slur, because you get to see the people who didn't really care about it from the beginning.
Yeah, and as I said, this is such a complicated conversation that we could literally continue going down multiple paths on it. I guess to end on a hopeful note, what suggestions would you have for dealing with this and dealing with, I would say, the negative feelings of DEI? Because right now, the way that they're talking about Kamala, I say it wrong every time and I get corrected, so I want to make sure I'm saying it right. But what you're seeing, that stuff that's being said about the person who was clearly qualified enough to be VP. You have to be qualified to do it. The stuff that they're saying about her is essentially a slur. You might as well be dropping the M-bomb when you say she's a DEI hire. You might as well. Oh, am I being crazy? If I'm being crazy, then please let me know.
But this is kind of a space where I'm confused. Is that every time there's like an overt space of racism in America, there seems to be this like proverbial like, oh my God, did they just say racism has existed?
Yeah, that's true.
And that didn't just go away, unfortunately. They just have a different way of saying it now. So yes, DEI is a DEI is a slur now. DEI hire is a slur now. And they're because there's just such a comfortability from the first time that some people were able to say things that we didn't really realize was a racist or a slur. When they were saying drain the swamp, they weren't talking about the older and antiquated ways of doing things. No, they were saying drain the swamp because DC is called Chocolate City for a reason. It's a predominantly Black city. It was built off of Black people, and so drain the swamp was mean get all of us out of here. And so now we're seeing that, which is a genuine slur. It has been a slur for years. Swamp creatures come back into the messaging because they've always been comfortable to be racist. And this is kind of the first time, I think, in the millennial and Gen Z space where we are seeing people just like, no, I'm racist and I'm happy about it because I have somebody who when we talk about representation, they're representing me. They're not afraid to say it, and so why would I?
Yeah, and truthfully, it's wild. I never thought about the correlation there with the whole drain the swamp thing, but that actually is very on point. But I'm just tired. So yeah, I realized we went off on a tangent. How do we change this into anything positive? Like, can we? Is there any way to recover the momentum that we had in 2020, even so brief? Is there, like, what would you recommend to somebody? Like, if we have allies that are listening, like, how do we recapture some of that? Or is that gone, or how? Like, what are the next steps? Because honestly, I want to fight everybody that says that this educated woman is a DEI hire. I want to fight somebody. I know that's not the right option. It's not the right option, but I kind of want to. But go ahead.
I mean, honestly, I think for our mental health, right? We've got to stop being shocked that people are who they are. Like, we know that they've been racist when they are upholding systems that are negative for a vast group of people, even themselves. We can't continue to be shocked and to pour so much energy into that. And I think we're starting to see that with this election, that we're really just kind of turning our energy of like, how do we support each other? How do we make sure that we are amplifying the right voices and putting our dollars and putting our energy behind the right spaces? And so I think one of the ways that we've seen that, when it was time to fundraise for Kamala Harris, there were some Zooms. So they were like Zooms for Black women, Zooms for Black men. And shout out to the white women. They realized like, hey, actually, those are spaces for them. Let's just give them a safe space to talk amongst themselves on how they want to support. We're going to create our own Zoom, and we're going to raise money and talk about real issues and how we need to check ourselves and really put forth the right energy and push America in a more progressive direction. And so I think we have to just continue to pour our energy into those spaces, and not we can't be shocked that the devil is the devil. Like, he is who he is, and they're gonna continue to do what they feel is in the best interest of them. We have to now turn around and say, okay, what is in the best interest of us? And to Black people specifically, we have to stop tearing each other down and stop saying, well, I'm going through something bad, but it's not as bad as yours, or no, actually, it's worse off, kind of thing. And really talk about how we support each other on a deeper, on every single level, not just in professional sense.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% on that. I mean, to my last point, to the feeling of being kind of like concerned or upset about the racism is just that it's gotten so blatant. You're like, dang, like, really? It's just,
it's 2024. You ain't.
But I see your face. I see your face, and my rebuttal is, at one point it used like we went from what happened before the civil rights movement and all of that, where it was very blatant, to the point where it's been insidious until we saw like Obama come back, and then Trump, because I feel like Obama showing in his excellence that he was an excellent Black man made some people feel uncomfortable, and I feel like it's very blatant, and I'm gonna let you respond, because your face is waiting to curse me out, but that's just how I feel, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it's just like, maybe it's the delusion of my hope that, like, okay, cool, like, we're not gonna go this ham, but to say some of that stuff to me feels messed up.
I mean, I don't think I can't say that it wasn't always overt or in our faces, because, and this is coming from me growing up in North Carolina, it's just blatant. There are now people who feel more emboldened again to make it clear that they don't like Black people. But I mean, if before the pandemic, if you went into some of the hills of West Virginia, they tell you you need to turn around. Sundown towns didn't just go away. That still exists. You go some places in Alabama, to this day, when that sun goes down, you need to be far in the other direction. And so that didn't stop. There's still lynchings that happen in cities outside of Chicago. That was happening during the pandemic. I believe 8 people were lynched. And so that it didn't stop. We stopped paying attention to it. And with the world being on fire, it's hard to pay attention to something that's always been a kind of a burning issue and things like that. But there, before the pandemic, when I lived in DC and I'd come back to North Carolina, there are certain towns that I knew I just need to keep rolling through, and I'll use the bathroom when I get someplace safe, or it's kind of late, so let me not stop here. So I don't think that's fair to our ancestors. I don't think that's fair to the George Floyds, to the Sonia Masseys, to any other people who are constantly or have fall victim to to white supremacy, to racism, to discrimination, to say that is now coming back. I mean, we have the same slurs and issues, just in a slightly different way. It was the same thing with Obama when he was being elected. It was the same. I mean, I have MLK and Malcolm X right behind me. That was, during their time and the times before that. And so I think sometimes, because we have a constant state of despair and trauma and things that we can't really fix, it kind of feels, when it's right in your face and you can't avoid it, sometimes it feels a little like it's new, like it's different, but it's always been the same. And I don't say that in a way to discourage anyone. I think what we all have to do is, and this just applies to anything in life, act in knowledge. If you know that there's a certain group of people who are gonna do a certain group of things, don't expect anything different from them. If they choose to change it, that's beautiful. Different. But in spite of their toxicity and their indifference, what are you going to do to make sure that you're good and can influence a positive change?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing you just pointed out too was locale. And I think for me, like, I spent my time in New York, and it's, New York's a pretty blue state, like you don't really get a lot of that. But I have seen, to your point, more stuff, here and in southern states that I would not have been aware of. But so that, to that point, I guess, you're correct. It's just, I feel like we took like 2 steps forward and then we ran backwards like 100 steps. But to your point, it's always been that way. So maybe it's just all about opinions. Like, it's all about, I don't know. We could keep going on this for a long time, but we want to say thank you to Healing Hotti, a.k.a. Bree, for making it here. Do you want to tell people how they can find you, all that fun stuff?
Absolutely. So again, I am Healing Hotti, Healing Hotti, and the number 3, all one word, on Instagram, TikTok. I will be dropping a podcast this August 2024, so be sure to check that out on YouTube. And I'm super excited to have the opportunity to just talk with you guys and explore this topic today.
Yeah. Definitely. I said I could think of you, the first person that came to mind when I started thinking about, going through this, just because I know that we would have gotten not just deep knowledge, but also very, your strong opinions and stuff, which I appreciate every time.
Yeah, and you have more experience with this than I do. So I was pretty excited to have you come through.
Well, we appreciate you for making it this far. Definitely, all the fun stuff that people tell you to do. Give us a like, subscribe, all that stuff. We'll add Healing Hotti stuff into our description so you can check out some more of her stuff as well.
Yep.
Thank you. Peace.